So yesterday I discussed the fact that one of the big challenges I see is people misunderstanding the difference between a dry and a wet area, and gave the example of entrances where you have matting, but unless that building entrance matting is deep enough, then it's actually not going to do what it's designed to do, which is keep the floor dry. So that's a good thing for people to go away and consider. But another challenge that sometimes happens where people perceive floors as being dry, but actually they are wet, is where there's a condensation issue. And there's a couple of examples here that I've helped to deal with over the years that I thought would bring this to light a little bit. One is in a shopping centre where there is a link bridge which goes over a road between two parts of the centre, and you've got glazing on either side and on parts of the roof as well. But there's no openings in that glazing at all, so it's a fully enclosed space. In other words, you would expect it to be a dry space, and therefore you would expect to be able to choose a floor surface that is slippery when wet, because actually the risk of somebody slipping is minuscule and only driven by spillages. In fact, what happens in this link bridge is that it sweats and there's condensation which appears on the floor, and therefore all of a sudden you've gone from what you expected to be a dry environment to being one that is quite regularly wet, and therefore you need to do something to that floor surface to make it safe when wet, or if you can, see if you can stop that condensation from happening. Another example of this I've seen in some train stations and some shopping centres with Terrazzo floors before, is that they kind of sweat as well, and so you kind of get this condensation liquid kind of coming up from below the surface up to the top. And again, what that means is you've got a floor which has been laid and installed in a part of the building which was expected to be dry, but all of a sudden it's becoming wet pretty constantly, and you can't prevent that from happening without some major engineering work, and therefore that's when you need to think about what you can do to make that surface safe when wet. I'm going to be talking about a big case which I have referenced before, which was a death due to a slip and fall in a co-op store in Cornwall in 2015. But in summing up that case, Cornwall Council basically said that if you've got a floor that's wet, you need to either stop people from walking on it, or you need to make sure that the floor is safe when wet. So there's a very binary option. When you've got these issues around condensation, it's almost impossible to stop somebody from walking on that floor because you can't stop the condensation. So therefore you need to make the floor safe when it's wet. And that's the only way to reduce the risk of accidents, but it's also the only way to protect yourself in the event of any civil, or indeed, like the co-op suffered, criminal prosecution as well. So go away and think about that. Think if you've got any areas in any of your buildings where you might have a condensation issue, and if so, consider what that means in terms of trying to make those floor surfaces safer. See you again on the next video.